Hi everyone, Janie here. Welcome back to my garden. So today I wanted to do another plant profile video for you all. My plant profile playlist is a playlist that I'm working on, compiling all of my favorite plants, the plants I love, the plants I lean heavily on in my Zone 9B garden. My goal for this playlist is to have it as a resource for all of you that live in a very warm environment like I do, whether you're in Zone 8, 9, or 10 or kind of around there, where you guys can look and you all can see what plants do really well in our area, what plants are easy to care for in our area, and then once you do plant those plants, how to take care of them, how to prune them, fertilize them, water them, and where to plant them. So if you guys are in search for a new plant to go into your garden, check out my plant profile playlist. I will link it in the description down below, and hopefully that will give you guys some good ideas for plants that can go in your garden. Today I wanted to talk about one of my favorite plants, one of the backbones in my garden, which is Star Jasmine. And you can see I have my massive one right here behind me. It's also known as Confederate Jasmine and Southern Jasmine, which is really funny because it's not even a true jasmine. It's just called jasmine because of the shape of the flowers. They look so similar to jasmine flowers, but it's not actually a true jasmine. So the reason why I love this plant so much, like I said, it's basically a backbone. It's a staple in gardens here in California and also in the South, the Southern United States. This plant loves heat. It also loves humidity. So if you live in a drier area like I do, you do have to water it a little bit more than if you lived in the Southern United States where you have more humidity. I love how versatile this plant is. You can use it as a climber like I do. You can let it get all messy, or you can really control it and exfoliate it and really put it where you want it to be. Or you can use this plant as a ground cover. If you just want to cover a large amount of space really quickly, this plant will do that for you. I feel like Star Jasmine is the perfect plant to give your garden that secret garden kind of feel. I always talk about how I want my garden to kind of feel like a secret garden, almost like a cottage garden, which is, you know, this plant will fit right in with cottage gardens, but I think that it's just this romantic, I'm looking up here because I even have tendrils of it coming over here. I think it just gives this the most romantic feel to gardens, and adding it into your garden just gives it that lush, gorgeous look that I'm looking for in my own garden. Star Jasmine is hardy in zones 8 through 11, so it obviously likes warmer temperatures. If you live in a zone cooler than zone 8, you can obviously use this plant as an annual and just let it, you know, die during your cold winter season. However, it responds really well to planting it in pots and then taking the whole pot inside, maybe putting it in your garage or your greenhouse for the winter. A lot of people do it that way. Star Jasmine's favorite environment is moderately moist, humid environments like those areas in the South. It loves the moisture, it loves the humidity, and it loves the heat. Star Jasmine is a perennial vine, so if you live in zones 8 through 11, it's gonna be a perennial for you, and it's gonna want to vine up. It's gonna want to grow all the way up a structure. If you put it near something like a tree, it will actually start wrapping itself around a tree and might cause damage to the tree. So it can be a bit invasive, and you do have to watch that. Like I said, it is not a part of the jasmine family. It's just called jasmine because of their cute little white flowers that look very similar to a summer jasmine or a winter jasmine, but it's not a jasmine. It's actually a part of this family, which I cannot pronounce, otherwise known as the dog Bane family. This was crazy when I was looking this up. The dog Bane family is known, the plants, the taxa in that family, a lot of them have a milky white sap, which Star Jasmine has. When you cut it, when you prune it, when you break off a leaf, it has a milky white latex sap that comes out, and that puts it in the dog Bane family. The dog Bane family is known as the dog Bane family because these plants, I guess, used to be used as dog poison. A lot of the plants in the dog Bane family are poisonous to dogs. So when I read this, I got very, very worried because I didn't think this plant was poisonous to dogs. I looked it up a whole bunch. Star Jasmine is not poisonous to dogs. It's just part of the dog Bane family because of its milky latex-like sap. As for season of interest, Star Jasmine is an evergreen. It has these beautiful dark green glossy leaves all year long if you live in zones 8 through 11. But I think the main season of interest is late spring to early summer, particularly around Mother's Day, because that's when it blooms and the scent is incredible. When my Star Jasmine blooms, I can smell my garden down the street. I will be walking my dog and I can smell it 5 houses away. I absolutely love it. We open up all our windows and we enjoy the scent in May and June. So Star Jasmine can get around 18 to 20 feet tall with support. I tend to wrap mine around different things so it never gets quite that tall, but this plant behind me has grown up. I have it wrapped around a wire on the eave of my garage, and it is definitely at the 20-foot mark, if not even a little bit more. It is a quick grower, a fast grower. It grows about 3 to 6 feet per year, which is absolutely crazy. So you can imagine if you're using it as a ground cover, it's gonna cover the area in the ground very quickly. They recommend if you are using it as a ground cover, don't plant it any closer than 5 feet apart. Otherwise, the plants will get too smushed together and won't thrive. As for sun requirements for Star Jasmine, the official recommendation is full sun to part shade. And I think if you live in the South, I think that that is a really good recommendation because there's enough humidity and moisture in the air for the plant to be able to handle the full sun. Because I live in California and I have a very dry environment, I think full sun is a bit too much for Star Jasmine. I do have one of my Star Jasmines in full sun, but I've had to up the amount of water that I've been giving it because it just scorches. It's just too much for it. So I think that if you live in California, if you live in a hot, dry environment, I would err towards the side of part sun to maybe even full shade. I did read a whole bunch of resources that said that this plant will grow in full shade. It might not bloom as well as full sun, but it is gonna grow and it is gonna bloom a little bit. So I like to put my Star Jasmine in a part shade area, and if I can protect it from hot afternoon sun, even better. Like I said, if you live in the South, if you live in a more humid area than I do, I think full sun to part sun is the way to go for you. Now, having said all that, I think that the best thing I can tell you is play with it. This plant is really versatile. It can handle all different ranges. Put it where you want to put it and see how it does. If it gets too much sun, bump up the amount of water that you're giving it. If it gets too much shade, just be okay with it not blooming as well. As for water needs, Star Jasmine needs moderate watering. Now, again, if you live in the South and you live in a more humid area, you're not gonna need to water it as much as I do in my arid, dry climate here in California. So I am finding that I actually need to water my Star Jasmine more than I thought, especially during the summer when it gets really, really hot and really, really dry. I need to keep my Star Jasmine watered. As it gets better, it gets more leaves, it's transpiring more water as it gets hot and in the sun. Of course, you need to bump up the amount of watering. I get a lot of questions from all of you at home saying, my leaves are turning brown, they're scorching. And from experience, I can say your Star Jasmine probably is not getting enough water. Having said all that, of course, you don't want to overdo it. You don't want to put Star Jasmine in a spot that is not well draining. You don't want to let it sit in water because that, of course, can cause root rot. Star Jasmine likes neutral to acidic soil around 6.0 to 7.0. However, I can tell from experience that it is forgiving about this. I have a little bit alkaline soil and it still can handle it very well. If you deal with deer or rabbits, it is deer resistant. However, rabbits will apparently eat some of this, might nibble on it a little bit. It's not going to love it because of the milky sap, but they will chew on the leaves a bit. As for fertilizing, once or twice a year is good. Once in the spring before it starts blooming, and then again midsummer after it blooms. Now, I didn't know this. I always just fertilized my Star Jasmine once in the spring before it started blooming, and it's done fantastic. Now that I know this and I've done my research, I probably will fertilize it a second time midsummer next year, just to give it that extra boost of nutrition. So a slow release fertilizer is perfect, all-purpose fertilizer. It doesn't need anything specific. As for pruning, Star Jasmine responds really, really well to pruning. And because it is such a fast grower, it's something that you're going to have to do. I do prune my Star Jasmine, and I prune it pretty often. The best time to prune Star Jasmine is right after it blooms, in the early summer, maybe early autumn, because Star Jasmine does flower on old wood. So if you prune it too late during the season, you're gonna forego the flowers that next late spring or early summer. However, my Star Jasmine is such a fast grower, I just have to kind of forget about that, and I do have to prune it because it will just get crazy and just grow and grow and grow and grow if I don't prune it. So I do have to prune it more than just after the flowering season, just to keep it in check. If you are growing Star Jasmine as a vine, if you prune the top of the vines, it will encourage a fuller, more bushy look as opposed to just long stringy tendrils. At this point, I am focusing on just length, so I'm just letting it grow and only pruning off the kind of crazy branches that are going in ways that I don't want it to go. So again and again, when I was looking up different companion plants for Star Jasmine, the same recommendation kept coming up, and that was clematis. So it's really funny because I had never read that clematis was a good companion plant for this plant. I never really even thought about companion plants for this plant because I think it is a star in its own. You know, it is just kind of a backbone foundation plants that you don't really have to worry about companion plants. But if you do want to worry about companion plants, apparently a clematis with a big dark purple flower, like a clematis jackmanii, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but the contrast of the big purple flower, the big bold purple flower, and the petite white blooms of the jasmine is apparently beautiful, and they have the same growing conditions. So I'm thinking about putting a clematis jackmanii right next to one of my Star Jasmine and seeing how it does. In my own experience, I find that I really like putting Star Jasmine right next to a limelight hydrangea. I think that those two together, the white, the pure white, it's just gorgeous. I think it's beautiful. So that's another good option as well. As for propagation, you can propagate this plant by cuttings. I've done it before, but you have to be patient, right? You have to take your time because Star Jasmine is one of those plants where it's the sleep, creep, leap. The first year of growth is often really dedicated to below ground, to the root establishment. So when you plant a Star Jasmine, you're not going to see much top growth for the first year because the roots are going to be developing. However, after that, you're going to see up to 6 feet per year. It's going to start growing like crazy. As for pest pressure, I personally in my garden find I don't have very many, if not any, pest pressure for my Star Jasmine. However, it is susceptible to scale type bugs as well as Japanese beetles, and we don't have Japanese beetles here. So if you are dealing with scale bugs or if you're dealing with Japanese beetles, something like neem oil is going to work really well to combat that pest pressure. I actually find most of my praying mantis egg sacs hidden inside my Star Jasmine plants, so I actually think it is a good host plant for good type of bugs for my garden, and I love that. As for drawbacks to Star Jasmine, I think that there are two. One of them is that it is a bit invasive, like I said. It is a fast grower and it will go crazy if you let it. It will, get into the eaves of your house. It will get into your gutters. It will wind around trees and different plants and choke them out. So it is something that you do have to watch, and you have to be ready with your pruners if you need it, especially if you're going to grow it along your house like I do. I know that it is an invasive plant, and I know that on a regular basis I'm going to have to come out here and keep it in check. The other drawback that I think Star Jasmine has is the milky white latex-like sap that comes out when you cut it, when you prune it. When I'm pruning my Star Jasmine, I will get that sap, I feel like, all over me, and I feel like I'll have sticky hands, sticky pruners, and even a sticky face because it will drip on me. And that sap can actually be irritating to some people's skin. So it doesn't bother me, it never bothers me other than the fact that it's sticky and gross, but that is something that's kind of annoying about this plant. And if it is irritating to you, just make sure you wear protective clothing, gloves, and long sleeves. So I hope you all enjoyed this video. I hope you have a chance to try out Star Jasmine if you haven't already, and I hope you all have a chance to get into your garden today.